This is the Happy Rant Sports podcast, in which Ted Cluck and Barnabas Piper rant about old sports, new sports, sports books, sports movies, and anything else related to sports that they feel like. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Rant Sports podcast. I am Ted Cluck, joined as always in studio by my good friend, my partner in sports radio, Barnabas Piper. Pipe, it's been a long time since we've done sports radio together. So much so that I almost forgot the intro. And we had a really good conversation about moving a kid into Christian college off the air. So I gotta get back a little bit into my sports radio guy persona.
Yeah, but we have to back off of meaningful things and talk about trite things.
Yes, exactly. We have to back off of kind of quiet, thoughtful, contemplative, meaningful things, and go back into loud, hot takey sports radio personas. But we got a lot to talk about here, Pipe. Including, I want to start at the top with something that a listener brought to our attention. You texted last night and said a listener wanted to know our thoughts on the Little League World Series. And my thought is, I don't know that I have any thoughts on it. In that, here's what I think about it, and I want to hear you on it. I know that it's happening. I know when it's happening, roughly, because it always kind of dominates ESPN's August programming, which I've basically, I don't want to say gotten a divorce from ESPN, but I never watch ESPN except to watch like a live sport that I want to see.
Right.
But I see all the promos for the Little League World Series, and on the app, there's all those little like kind of bland color boxes with the initials for each team. So I know that it's happening, and I know that for some people, it's like apex mountain of charm and good old kind of American vibes. But having had kids who have played youth sports, it was usually just kind of a hellscape of like insane parents and stupidity. So I know that beneath that veneer of good old sweet Americana, there is probably a burbling, mass of parents that you wouldn't want to spend any time around. So I guess that's my take on the Little League World Series. Where are you at on it?
Yeah, I pay very little attention to it. I used to like it a lot more. And I think I'm going to run the risk of just sounding like a grumpy old man here, but here we are.
Yeah.
You used the phrase apex of charm. I feel like that's the problem with it. It used to actually be charming because it was like, man, these are the teams that won in their states and their regions and whatever, and they got here to this little town in Pennsylvania, I think. And now it's curated charm. Where ESPN is constantly like, oh, isn't this just a heartwarming story that Bubba, the chubby first baseman who's here to hit dingers and whatever. And you're like, everything is memeable. Everything is charming. It feels like having, Pleasantville shoved down your throat. And it, and then they like zoom in on the kids who are weeping after losing a game. And they're like, oh, it's so heartbreaking. Let's exploit their grief. And I don't know. I'm kind of, the coverage of it, I think, makes me hate it more. Here's the thing. If I'm like walking the dog or whatever, and I'm near a baseball game of like 8-year-olds or 15-year-olds or whatever, like I will inevitably stop and watch for some pitches or an inning or whatever, because I love baseball. Yeah. I hate having baseball curated for me to tell me what is intriguing and what is charming and what are the storylines. I hate storylines. Storylines are not interesting to me.
I know.
It's the same reason it's the same reason the Olympics get on my nerves when they're like, isn't this an amazing storyline? I mean, you know what's amazing? World records being broken. That's cool. That's
true.
I like watching fast people be fast.
Yeah, I want to see a guy running super fast. I don't need to know the whole backstory. Yeah, I'm with you, Pipe. And isn't this like more a conversation maybe just about media overreach in general? Like, I think everything is overcovered, overproduced, overpackaged, foisted upon us in a way that like assumes a level of interest that isn't there, and then also insults our intelligence at the same time. And again, at the risk of me sounding like the grumpy old man now, like I think there was a minimalist kind of grace about sports media coverage in, let's say, like the 60s. They were still figuring it out. But once we hit like the mid 70s through the mid 80s, it was it was the right amount of coverage and the right type of coverage. And I realize I'm just idealizing my childhood in that statement, which is kind of what I do for a living, probably. But I don't know. It's crass now. It seems gross.
Well, it's the downside of no breathing space. Like there's no, so what used to be charming in sports was things that were discovered, things that were like they developed over time, or even like take baseball, for example. The reason Fenway Park was kind of always the coolest was because it was the oddity. It's got the green monster. It's kind of got this, what did they call that? The real short pole in right field. The pesky pole, all this stuff. And you're like, because they just wedged it into a neighborhood. It's been there for 100 years. And then they start building ballparks in like wide open expanses, and they're still making them quirky. And they're like, oh, it's got the small town, little inner city charm. And you're like, it's in a field of parking lots, and you're making it quirky. This is so the forced charm, instead of letting things kind of be charming, is kind of exhausting. And so I've honestly gotten to the point where I care nothing about what happens off the field. Yeah. I care nothing about the coverage. I mute almost every sporting event I watch because the talking heads fill up every spare moment. Yes. And I'm just like, I just want to watch the game. I want to watch great athletes do great things and be excited about that. And what, who they broke up with, or what funny thing they tweeted, like the showing of other athletes' tweets about something during a game. Couldn't care less. If I'm on Twitter, I'll see it. If not, whatever. So
I know. I'm glad you brought that up.
The game.
Yeah, like the showing of Twitter on the screen. It's like, no, they don't get it. I go to the screen to escape all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, sports has been besmirched by the creep, the intrusion of the toilet that is social media. Yeah, it's a mess, man. It really is.
And I like social media, but the advantage to social media is that I can do it on my terms.
That's right.
Who am I following? What lists have I curated? I don't want to see what, Kevin Durant says about Steph Curry's performance in the playoffs. I just want to watch Steph Curry hit threes or whatever. Yeah.
I think too, like in the older days, there was a delightfulness of like discovery. Like I remember, and this is a weird story. I don't know why I'm thinking about this right now, but I remember being a very small child, probably 7 or 8 years old, and I was being, as is the purview of the only child, I was being dragged somewhere by my parents. Like they had gone to visit somebody, and it was like the middle of the day on a Saturday, and the person was like, to me, they were like, hey, you can watch some TV, So I flipped on the TV. There were like 4 channels, but the NBA Finals was on one of them, because the finals used to get like crappy time slots in the 80s. So it was like 2:00 on a Saturday, and the Celtics and the Lakers were playing in Boston, like on the parquet floor. And it was like, Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and Bird and Magic. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I remember being kind of won over by it and sort of enraptured by it. And it was the joy of stumbling upon something that was awesome. And I think as a kid, my capacity for caring was much larger, in that whatever season it was, I was all in on that season. Like if it was baseball, I was, flipping through the Ken Griffey baseball cards and hanging posters, and same thing for basketball and football. But now, and maybe this is a function of just having kids who are a certain age or having parents that are getting older or whatever, like my bandwidth for caring about anything in sports is so narrow. It's like I can think about the NFL, a little bit of college football, the CFL, my fantasy team, the Mariners, and that's it.
And
that's probably too much.
The number of things you have to give attention to, you have as a kid, you have no responsibilities. And so like every spare moment can be putting yourself, like, I'm going to be a professional athlete. I'm watching sports. I'm reading articles. I'm memorizing the stats on cards. And now it's like, baseball, I still have, my parents dropped off my collection of baseball and football cards.
Nice.
It's just a collection of nostalgia. Like, I don't have time to look at those. I still am glad I own them, but I don't know what I'm going to do with them. And, so there's just no there's no margin for total passion. And when you find an adult who's so passionate about sports, you kind of look at them like they're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. You're kind of like, what are you letting slide in your life so that you can be this passionate about sports?
I was going to say, I feel like maybe your marriage is suffering because you know the stats of, you know, the University of Alabama's third string running back or something. Like, you know, his recruiting profile. Like, I feel like maybe that's not healthy.
Yeah. I mean, there's something a little bit juvenile about a middle-aged man, like knowing that much about sports. And I do get the irony of being a middle-aged man talking on a podcast about sports. Which is what we're going to do today, Pipe. So I have no doubt that we disappointed that listener who wanted to hear our takes on the Little League World Series. And
either probably that or we affirmed his bias completely.
That's true. I hope it's that. Maybe he can let us know if we disappointed him or affirmed his bias. But yeah, I think part of it, last thing on the Little League World Series, like I'm here for stories about the chubby first baseman, like overcoming his fears and hitting a dinger to win the Little League World Series or whatever. But knowing that like that chubby first baseman's dad manages a hedge fund and pays $40,000 a year for like boutique hitting instruction kind of takes the shine off of it. You know what I mean? I mean, these aren't kids like throwing the ball around in the backyard anymore. This is a kid who's been like specializing in this sport since he was in diapers.
Yeah, when the chubby kid has a personal chef to manage his weight, you know, I no longer find it charming. You know, I much prefer the Twinkie mashing, you know, bike riding, sandlot playing kid who is actually an interesting story. Basically, I like ham porter. That's my.
I know, dude. Give me the kid who like crushes Twinkies in the dugout and then you know steps into the batter's box to mash a home run. I'm here for that kid. But yeah, no, that's good, Pipe. So let's talk a little NFL, Piper.
Yes.
It's my favorite time of the year, which is ramp up to the NFL season. By way of background for the listeners, in case they're new to the program, you started a fantasy league. How many years ago was that? I was trying to remember how long we've been doing this.
3 or 4.
At least 3 years.
I think this might be our 4th season.
I think so. So we started a fantasy league, or you did rather, for the purposes of A, getting me back into fantasy football because I had like a decade-long hiatus. And then B, kind of like it being a mill for content that we could use on this program, this spinoff show, Happy Rant Sports. So I want to talk about keepers because this is a super flex keeper league. So it's auction style, big rosters, 2 quarterbacks, and we get to keep up to 5 guys. Now, my keeper philosophy is always keep 5 guys. Like I always have 5 guys on my roster that I want to keep, enough to keep all of them. But I ran into my buddy Kevin Vales, shout out Kevin Vales, who's in the league and is also a listener, and he only kept like 2 guys. So Pipe, I want to know your keeper philosophy and the guys that you kept this year.
Yeah, so our league, you know, we do an auction, so every player has a dollar value. If you keep them, their value goes up year over year, so it gets more expensive to keep guys. That's just for the listeners' context. So it's all value for me. And so I usually keep 5 because I look at it and I go, if I can guarantee 5 roster spots at dollar amounts that I think are below what they would go for in the auction, I think I came out ahead. So I kept, for example, Josh Allen, A.J. Brown, J.K. Dobbins, Mike Davis, and CeeDee Lamb. So good players. Josh Allen's probably top 5 at his position. A.J. Brown's top 10. Dobbins is probably top 20, 15.
Yeah. Mike Davis is just going to get all the carries.
Yeah, Mike Davis he might be nothing. He might play 6 games and then get replaced, or he might be kind of the workhorse guy for Atlanta. And CeeDee Lamb could be a top 10 receiver. He's kind of in that 10 to 20 range. But the thing is, all of them were pretty significantly undervalued,
underpriced.
So and like, whereas I look at some of the keepers that other guys kept. So, like one guy kept Nick Chubb at $34. It's a $200 budget.
Yeah,
that's expensive, but like Nick Chubb would probably go for 45 or 50. So Austin Eckler kept at 31. He's probably a $35 to $40 running back. So you look at it, it's all value to me. Like,
Yeah.
This gives me money then to go in and try to get a number one running back, etc. I don't
Yeah.
like only keeping two because it means that I am at the whim of who everybody else keeps. And if somebody wants to way overbid for a guy that I really want, I don't have I don't have any positional sort of stability.
Yeah, no, that's good. And also I think one of the appeals of the dynasty or keeper league format is kind of the like draft and develop ethos.
Yep.
Like you want to be drafting guys and keeping the talent pool deep enough so that you do have some like value choices in terms of who you're keeping from year to year. This was a year that I probably am overpaying for a couple of my keepers. In fact, I know that I am. And I was actually tempted to overpay for more of them, but I kept Justin Herbert at $6. The Yahoo price tag on him was 13, so I got him under market.
So here's another thing that listeners need to know, though. It's a 2 quarterback league. And so what Yahoo says is 13 is based on a 1 starter league. So quarterbacks are more flexible. You have to have at least one really good quarterback in our league or you're just hosed. Yeah. And you need 2 functional ones, really.
Dude, I was toying with keeping 3 quarterbacks. Because I had 3 guys that I was intrigued enough by to want to keep them. I didn't end up doing that. So I kept Herbert at $6. I overpaid a little bit for Lamar. But having Lamar is like having a quarterback and a running back in your lineup. So Lamar's Yahoo price tag was 23. I paid 31 to keep him. I'm rooting for a Lamar bounce back year, and I just like having him. He's a fun guy to have in fantasy.
I mean, a Lamar bounce back year, sure, but he still ran for 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. Like he probably would have been the number 12 running back.
Yeah, Lamar is going to bring like Mike Davis value just as a runner, which is intriguing, and that's a guy that you want to have around. So Herbert and Lamar are my keepers at quarterback. Receiver wise, I don't know how this happened, but I snagged Stephon Diggs last year for next to nothing.
Do you want to know how it happened?
Yeah.
Everybody thought Josh Allen sucked. So you remember that trade. People like Diggs had never been, he'd always been good, not great with the Vikings.
Right.
A little bit injury prone.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen had been, everybody was like, oh, this is when they made that trade, people were like, have fun getting the ball thrown 11 yards over your head, Stephon Diggs. That was sort of
Josh Allen was like 6 bad games away from being Mitch Trubisky. Like that's how in the precipice it was for him. And then of course he put together.
So you got Diggs for $6-7 in the draft last year.
Yeah.
Or in the auction. And it was like, fine, congratulations, you got a 4th receiver. And instead he was probably the best, him or Tyreek Hill. They were the best receivers in the league last year. So now you have a top 5 receiver in the league at $13, which is an absolute steal.
Yeah, no, I know it. The guy that I was tempted to overpay for at receiver, who I didn't, was DeAndre Hopkins. The price tag on him was $46, which would have taken a huge chunk out of my budget. There's something I don't quite like about that team.
Arizona?
Yeah.
Probably the fact that their offense stinks. And he's he and Kyler Murray are the only 2 guys you want on that entire team.
I know, dude. Like that team to me has an insanely high ceiling in terms of being fun and likable, but also by week 6, it could have all unraveled. You know what I mean? So like the floor is really low. And if it unravels, I think DeAndre Hopkins comes up with like a fake hamstring pull and doesn't play the second half of the season, and then I'm screwed.
Well, here's the other thing. You never want to overpay for a keeper because if they go back in the auction, you're putting him back in, you could get them at the same money or slightly less. So my guess is you could get him for $38 in the auction if you really like him, and you'll save $8 on it. Yeah,
I know it. So I let him go back into the auction. The other receiver that I kept for $8, and his Yahoo price tag was $8, was Jerry Jeudy. Crappy quarterback situation, but super intriguing guy, super toolsy guy. Had an interesting season last year in which if you want to buy the narrative that he was victimized by bad quarterbacking and he's really like a great player ready to break out, you could buy that. And I think I'm buying it. And for $8, I can afford to be wrong. So Jerry Jeudy.
They had maybe, I don't know if it was the worst, but it was probably a bottom 3 quarterback season collectively as a team last year. Because they had that one game where all their guys were either injured or out with COVID. So they started like a 4th string wide receiver and he completed one pass the whole game. Like,
exactly.
If they just have a competent backup, all of a sudden there's probably 150 more not because of that game, just like all the games, 150 more opportunities for receivers to catch a ball. And like they just had trash at quarterbacks. So
yeah, dude.
They have Drew Lock and Bridgewater this year, neither of whom are good. But if they're both healthy, they're NFL quarterbacks. So it very much raises the floor.
Pipe, I actually want to take a little departure from keepers. We'll get back into it. But I want to ask this question. Who is this year's Josh Allen from a quarterback standpoint? I.e., the guy who we're heading into the season thinking that he's crappy or a lost cause or washed or whatever, but who's going to put together a really ascendant, really interesting season that's going to resurrect his career. And I'm thinking Drew Lock might be in that conversation. Here's the funny thing about Drew Lock. I've never been a huge Drew Lock guy, but he's got a really interesting receiving core. The coaching staff fixed their offensive line. They drafted a really interesting running back who's going to make Melvin Gordon redundant. And Drew Lock, he's toolsy circa like, I don't know, 2015 and before. Like Drew Lock was what we used to think of as toolsy, right? Like huge arm, can move around in the pocket a little bit. Threw it a whole bunch in college, whatever. I mean, now toolsy means you've got to run a 4.4 in addition to all that other stuff. I don't know. I think Drew Lock could be this year's Josh Allen if things break right.
Well, I mean,
your thoughts?
I don't think anybody's going to be this year's Josh Allen just because that was anomalous. Like going from the least accurate quarterback to one of the best deep ball accuracy quarterbacks, going from couldn't master the offense to clicking on all cylinders. Yeah. I saw a really interesting stat about Locke, though. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league on every non-play action pass. Mm-hmm. And his play action stats were off the charts good, like, top quarter of the league type of thing. But they ran play action fewer than almost every other team, or fewer times. And so basically, if they do like what the Vikings do, which is run play action constantly, everything is based off of that. Yeah. Drew Lock could put together like a statistical Kirk Cousins season. So that's, you're talking 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 4,000 plus yards, and a pretty good completion percentage because it's a super structured offense. And on like that wouldn't surprise me. That's what people thought he was going to do last year. But I think they just ran a bad offense last year, and then there was injuries. And so, he could do that. Honestly, I think the guy who could do the Josh Allen thing is Kyler Murray, where Murray has been injured some. He's been a statistically good player, but not like, nobody looks at him and goes, that's the guy I want to lead a game-winning drive for my team. Yeah. If what is their coach's name? Texas Tech.
Cliff Kingsbury,
which is a great name. Unfortunately, not a great coach. If Kingsbury puts together a more creative offense, something that isn't gimmicky college garbage, I think Murray could be that guy. Like all of a sudden you go, that's why he was that pick.
Yeah, no, I know. You watch Kyler, and he's a really fun watch. Even when like the offense isn't hitting on all cylinders, and even when he's not playing especially well, he's just like a really freaky, fun guy to watch. He can go in any direction, like 0 to 60, real quick. I think that's a team that just needs to kind of find its identity and footing a little bit offensively and figure out who it is. And I really hope that happens because I like Cliff and I like their roster and I like their team.
And just big picture, football is more fun when all the quarterbacks are playing well. Like
Yeah, that's
watching
true.
football with bad quarterback play is like watching baseball when a pitcher can't throw strikes. It gets
Yeah.
just torturous. And so,
Yeah.
like, I want to see Arizona put together a structured offense where Kyler can thrive, because that would be so
Yeah.
much fun. Same thing, like watching like how Russell Wilson was developed over time, and how Jared Goff was put in a position to thrive for a few years. Like, they're not,
Yeah.
there's just, you see that happen. You go, that's so much fun. And then these guys kind of, you find out that Goff isn't good. It was a pure structure. Whereas like Russell Wilson has overcome multiple structures and still been good. And I think Kyler can do that. It's just, I really think Kingsbury has put him in a position to fail so far.
Dude, here's my dream. Here's my like football dork offensive scheme dream for Arizona's roster. I want to see them run like the mid 80s Houston Gamblers, like Jim Kelly USFL run and shoot. So Kyler under center. He's taken like a 3 or 4 step, like half roll to either side every play. There's one back, wide splits on the offensive line. You've got Rondale Moore in the slot, maybe Andy Isabella in the other slot, DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green on the outside. And it's just this sort of, the run and shoot was like jazz, because everything was an option route. So you've got to have, like in jazz, you've got to have people who are really good at playing together and really good at being on the same page. A good run and shoot offense like had lots of potential for like inside run game, play action off of it. I mean, it was a really fascinating offense that I think would play really well to Kyler's strengths and be really a fun watch. I don't know why. I don't know why nobody
can a 5'9" quarterback play under center consistently?
I think so, because that offense was all predicated on like getting the quarterback on the move every play. So it was like a moving pocket.
Yeah.
To use a cliche that people have used a lot. I think it would work, actually. We'll never know, because I think there's so much stealing of scheme going on now. Every offense is, and again, I'll never know this because I don't sit in those meeting rooms, but I think almost every NFL offense is multiple to a fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything's so available and everybody crushes so much film. It's like you're constantly grabbing a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
With the exception of like the Kubiak system.
Yeah.
Where I mean, they almost never run 3 receivers. It's always 2 receivers, 1 tight end, 2 running backs. Maybe they go 2 tight ends, 1 running back. And everything is run off like play action and the stretch running game, kind of that zone blocking scheme. And it's just like clockwork. And it's frustratingly not creative, but also it's always effective. If not explosive, it's at least effective.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the concepts that are at play in that offense, they just follow it, in the sense that, like, if I'm spreading my defense out laterally to stop the wide zone, that means like a running back with good vision can stick his foot in the ground and like bang it or bend it back inside, and I'm going to be vulnerable there. Conversely, if I'm allocating assets into the box to stop the same thing, then I'm going to be vulnerable to stuff over the top. I mean, it works. And if teams commit to it, typically they're successful if they have the right guys to run it. Is there anybody?
I have one other thought on a quarterback who could have that sort of jump up season, because I was trying to think, because what Josh Allen did was go from a guy who, like you said, was 6 games away from being replaced to being an MVP candidate. And there's not a lot of bad quarterbacks in the league right now. Like Houston has a bad quarterback situation, but that's because of Deshaun's legal issues. There's a bunch of rookie quarterbacks, so we don't know if they're good or not yet. And then there's a bunch of we know who these guys are, types of quarterbacks. Yeah. I think the other option is Tua.
Yeah.
Because Tua had a rough rookie season, but also they had a coordinator there who was there for Ryan Fitzpatrick. They replaced him. They got him, a highly, they brought in multiple really good receivers.
Yeah.
And apparently he looks great in camp, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But I always liked Tua. I thought Tua was going to be really good. I said he was going to be better than Joe Burrow coming out. And once he got healthy, and I don't know that I still hold to that, but I think it's a possibility because I think he has that. I mean, he just throws such a pretty pass, and apparently is a really good processor, good at reading the defense, et cetera. So he could be that guy who all of a sudden is like, Tua went from, we don't even know if this guy should have been a top 5 pick to Pro Bowler.
Yeah, and awesome roster there too. Like really fun roster. The big question mark on that offense is like, is the offensive line going to come together? And I think if it stays disastrous, obviously that hinders Tua's development. But dude, the funny thing about Tua for me, and I was thinking about Tua with this question a lot too, and I agree with you. I think it's all about narrative. I mean, in a season where Justin Herbert doesn't exist, I think we're talking about Tua's rookie year in completely different terms. You know, there's a universe in which you could spin the narrative around Tua's rookie year and go, he led the team to wins. He managed the game really well. He didn't make a lot of huge mistakes. We're bullish on Tua.
Yeah.
Everybody gobble up your Tua stock, but instead it was Justin Herbert hits the scene like a comet, with his floppy hair and his kind of like surfer boy good looks, and he's lighting up the West Coast, and he puts up this like monster statistical year for a team that's really crappy. People forget that the Chargers were so bad that their coach got fired and they weren't good. But I think there's kind of an alternate universe in which we're really positive about the Tua thing. And I'm with you. I think that's a good pick for a guy that could.
You clearly have a longer memory than most people, because it used to be that rookie quarterbacks were expected to either not play or to stink. And
to struggle mightily.
We have gotten to the point where we expect rookie quarterbacks to be adequate and then like in their second and third year become great. So if they struggle, it's like, bust. He's done. He's never going to be anything. And that's kind of what happened with Tua. He had like rookie struggles. Plus he was coming off of a leg that was like borderline, almost amputated. And so, he didn't have the grace of like, a learning curve. Plus there was no off season. Plus there was no training camp. So I just wouldn't be shocked at all if all of a sudden he comes out and puts up like he's completing 70% of his passes. He's, so he's like 26 out of 30 for 312 yards and 2 touchdowns every week. Just a machine.
No, I know it, and that would be fun to see. I would be excited to see that.
And listeners, I know that 26 out of 30 is not 70%. I was saying overall. So don't correct my math. Don't actually me, nerds.
You're definitely going to get actually. That's the nature of the beast these days. But I mean, I sound like the consummate old man here, but remembering John Elway sucking as a rookie and Troy Aikman struggling as a rookie and Peyton Manning being terrible as a rookie statistically, like these are the narratives that I remember growing up with, and obviously those guys.
Didn't Manning set an NFL record for interceptions his rookie year? He threw like 20. Maybe it wasn't a record, but it was like a rookie record. It was like 29 or something like that.
So he was really bad as a rookie, and I remember this because I was actually living in Indianapolis, finishing college. We were newly married, and so being newly married, no kids, in an NFL city, like I was watching a lot of Colts football, and like their roster was just abysmal. Yeah. They had like a semi-pro roster and Peyton Manning. And, and he's kind of like, he's got this huge pedigree and he's kind of trying to play hero ball and trying to do it all himself. And there was definitely a sense of, wow, this could really go either way. Yeah. And
I just looked it up. He led the league in attempts as a rookie. Not great. That shouldn't happen. Only completed 56% of his passes. 26 touchdowns. It's good. Yep. 28 interceptions. That's not good.
Yeah. I'm gonna look up like who was on those teams.
Although I will say the first 5 years of his career, he was an interception machine.
He was
28,
yeah.
15, 15, 23, and 19 before he kind of settled into the like Manning we were more aware of. And then then it was 10, 10, 10, 9. And then he was back up into double digits in the teens, for his last years in Indy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the league was different back then in that, interceptions weren't sort of the scarlet letter that they are now. There was a sense of you can take some chances. So actually, I take back what I said about his roster. So if there are any 1998 Indianapolis Colts players listening, apologies. Listen to this. Like, just listen to this group of people in a vacuum. Marshall Faulk. This was right before they traded him to the Rams. Late career Ironhead Hayward, which is just interesting and fun. Marvin Harrison. Ken Dilger, Marcus Pollard at tight end. That's a good tight end room. They had some interesting pieces.
I don't think Harrison was good right out of the gates though, because it took like they had to kind of develop the offensive scheme, because he was one of those guys who was like a kick returner gadget guy until they realized, he's also the best route runner in the league. Yeah,
exactly. Defensively, they struggled defensively. There wasn't a lot there. Late career Jeff Herrod. Let's see who else was there defensively to get excited about. Not a lot of people. The defense was kind of tough, but interesting how like narrative storylines in the league in general has changed from then to now in terms of how we talk about rookie quarterbacks and their seasons and so forth. My last keeper pipe, I kind of felt like I was overpaying for this guy, but I think the ceiling is high if he's healthy. George Kittle at $27. If he plays like healthy George Kittle, then I have the second best tight end in the league, and I'm always winning that matchup unless I'm playing against the guy who has Kelsey. So that's the gamble.
I think if I was in your shoes, looking at the guys you didn't keep, I think I probably... So Kittle at 27 is kind of a potential take your medicine, because I don't think it's going to be... You're not going to get a lot of savings out of that. But also, he could be the best tight end in the league. I mean, if Travis Kelce's healthy, he's the best. But I think I might have kept Keenan Allen at 21 and not kept Lamar Jackson at 31.
Yeah.
Because I think I could have bought Lamar Jackson back at cheaper than that. And Keenan Allen at 21, I mean, that... Because then you have three starting receivers, two of whom could be top 10, 15 guys. You have George Kittle. And so then you're basically just getting you want one more good quarterback, and then it's your running backs. Your running back situation is not awesome.
Yeah, no, that's good. My running back situation is non-existent at the moment. So so here's my logic on that. I kind of used the inverse of that logic in that my thought on Keenan Allen is that I can always buy him for cheap in the auction, because Keenan Allen is he's one of the least fun, least sexy, like, fantasy guys to have on a roster. Like,
and nobody absolutely one of my favorites, because assuming he's healthy, it's like I'm going to get 7 catches and a touchdown every other week. And if Herbert, the other thing is stacking him and Herbert would be a nice thing, because if Herbert has a great year, Keenan Allen is going to have a great year. He's his number one receiver. So
that was one that I had trouble like parting with.
Yeah.
Because just looking at my roster and looking at where the value could be, that was a great value one. The other one that I thought about keeping pipe, and I just couldn't do it because I hated having this guy in fantasy, was David Montgomery at $11.
That would have been a good value, though.
It would have been a great value, starting running back, going to get volume. But I've had him for the last couple of years, and I was just like, I can't do it again.
Yeah.
I think I would have
kept him over Judy in your shoes again, simply because like that way you have one of those spots filled, and it's a guy you can stomach. Like, that's kind of how I felt about J.K. Dobbins at 15. It's like, Dobbins might lead the league in rushing, or he might get like 800 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But he's at worst, it's a flex guy for me. Same with Mike Davis. Like, I'm not excited about either of those guys, but I'm like, well, Dobbins could way outperform this, or this could be his value. I don't know.
Yeah.
The
With
only
Judy.
the only keeper.
No, go ahead.
The only keepers of mine that I was excited. Josh Allen at 14, I was happy with in a 2-quarterback league,
sure.
and CeeDee Lamb at 11, I'm really happy with. The others, I kind of shrugged and was like, I mean, AJ Brown at 16 is either an amazing value or he's going to miss 2/3 of the year with an injury. I don't know. So
yeah, exactly.
It's just
dude, the Titans. Yeah, let's transition this into like a talk about the preseason.
Yes,
and we can do a couple minutes on the Titans. Did you watch their game against Atlanta? I was texting you a little bit during.
No, I didn't. Because I can't watch preseason football, especially not the first week or two, because it's like starters don't play. And I don't care about the Titans first stringers very much. I really don't care about their third stringers.
Yeah. And we're in this era where, so we're down a preseason game this year. So there's only 3 preseason games as opposed to 4 or 5 in the past. And a lot of teams have just come out and been like, you're not going to see our starting quarterback, running back, and wide receiver at all in the preseason. Like, I think the Chargers were like, we're not playing Justin Herbert in the preseason at all.
Yeah.
Which, as a fantasy owner of Justin Herbert, I breathe a sigh of relief. But yeah, as someone who traditionally has liked watching preseason football, it hits at a disappointing level. So I have one comment to make about the Titans-Falcons game from a uniform standpoint, and then I have a comment to make from a football standpoint. From a uniform standpoint, it was maybe the worst thing that I've looked at in a decade. In as much as it was like they gave a crayon and a blank pad to somebody in 2002 and said, draw what the future will look like. And they drew those 2 crappy uniforms. And seeing them both on the screen together made me sad.
Yeah, it had strong Any Given Sunday vibes to the uniforms.
That's so true, dude. Yeah, those goofy, ridiculous, over-the-top uniforms on Any Given Sunday. Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was akin to watching, which made it hard to watch. But also the football itself made it hard to watch in that your starting quarterback matchup was like Logan Woodside versus AJ McCarron. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're watching preseason football here. Make no mistake about it.
I mean, but here's the thing. Even if they had this, so you have Matt Ryan and you have Ryan Tannehill as their starters, both of whom statistically always good quarterbacks. Both of whom I think are just horrendously boring players. Maybe it's the name Ryan attached to quarterback. I don't know, but like, I don't want them in fantasy. I'm okay with them as a second quarterback. I don't want them quarterbacking my team.
Yeah.
All the advanced metrics say Ryan Tannehill is excellent. And I'm just like, boring. Just boring. Yeah. And Matt Ryan is even more boring.
Has there ever been a good Ryan in football? Like at the quarterback position? Let's keep it there for a minute. Let's just, let's go into the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, let's see.
I'm thinking of
Ryan Lee.
Pat Ryan,
who
Pat Ryan played for the Jets in the 80s, and he was like the kind of the fun backup that everybody liked, but never really put it together as a starter.
Yeah.
Any other Ryans that we're forgetting? Ryan Leaf, obviously. Yeah.
There was another Ryan who was like one of those, I don't know if he was an Ivy League guy or like a Rutgers guy or whatever, and kind of he came in as like a backup and filled in for different guys and was not good.
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick might be the best, right? Ryan. I mean,
I think he's the best Ryan.
Tannehill could overtake him, but
yeah, Fitzpatrick is the funnest Ryan.
Yes.
Like he's the Ryan that you don't mind watching.
Yeah, what we're gonna find out is that his first name is like Earl, and he just goes by Ryan. And so, like, if he was Earl Fitzpatrick, it would just make more sense.
Yeah, it would, dude. That would totally make more sense. Let's do a minute on the Titans on the field. As we've talked about ad nauseum on this program, I want to like the Titans. I want to get excited about the Titans. I'm a huge Taylor Lewan guy. The rest of the team, I have trouble with it. And I'm a huge Vrabel guy. Like, I like Vrabel a lot. I think the Titans could go back to being like 6-10, and it wouldn't shock me.
Just remember, it's a 17-game season now, so
yeah, 6-11.
6-11. Yeah, well, I think their defense is going to be abysmal, and so even, they traded for Julio Jones. They've got A.J. Brown, both of whom are just explosive players. Although Julio Jones kind of fits the Titans perfectly because statistically and like by all accounts, just he's probably the best receiver in the league over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Also really boring,
Yeah.
Just kind of and he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. There's just something about him that's like he's not Randy Moss, he's not Calvin Johnson, but he's physically like those guys.
He's a little Keenan-Allen-y in that regard,
And I think, Derrick Henry is probably the most fun running back to watch since Adrian Peterson's prime in terms of just like running force, total throwback. Yeah. But again, like, whatever. Yeah, they're still a shrug to me, and I think they're going to give up 30 points a game, which is just going to make it real hard to win consistently.
Yeah, they're going to give up 30, and I don't think that offense is like calibrated to put up 30 every week. I mean, they're an AJ Brown soft tissue injury away from like Anthony Ferkser being like the focal point of the offense, and that's from a pass game standpoint. Obviously, Derrick Henry's the focal.
They also lost their offensive coordinator, who has kind of turned Tannehill into a Pro Bowler, who has made Derrick Henry the focal point. Like, we don't really know what their offense is going to be without Arthur Smith.
That's true. I want to like it. I'm taking a wait and see on the Titans. I do want to like it. What else did I have on the show notes for preseason football pipe?
I don't know. I got like 5 minutes before I have to jump to another call. So
okay, I'm gonna ask you a quick Vikings question and a quick Mariners question, and then we'll close it out. My Vikings question is this: do you want to see the wheels completely fall off so that they have to blow it all up and start over, or do you think there's like anything to be squeezed from this current like iteration of the Vikings? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the current iteration of the Vikings is one quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. I think everybody in the building except Kirk Cousins knows that he can't lead them to a Super Bowl, but they're paying him to lead them to a Super Bowl. And
it's wild.
So, yes, my hope is, and I'm going to get a little controversial here. So he caused a ruckus earlier by missing a bunch of practices because he was exposed to COVID, and that means he's not vaccinated, and I'm not taking a stance on the vaccine. But I kind of hope that he just misses half the season because of exposure to COVID. I don't want him to get sick. I don't want anything bad. Just protocols, all the protocol nonsense. And the Vikings get so fed up that they are forced to figure out something to do with him that makes him not on the roster next year. I don't want to abide another season beyond this one with Kirk Cousins at quarterback because I know what he is. If everything around him is perfect, they are a division-winning team that can't go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He can't do it. And, I guess if everything around him is perfect, like, Trent Dilfer led a team to a Super Bowl victory, so that's possible. But like, I just want to see him go a different direction. And there's so many options these days, like Jimmy Garoppolo or maybe the guy that Kellen Mond might develop. Like, I don't care, just not him.
Right? Yeah. No, I get it. That's what I was fishing for. That was perfect. Last question: the Mariners. They've gotten fun. They're in the wild card hunt. They're stringing some wins together, although not last night. Is it for real, or are we a year or two away from it being for real? Because their run differential is not good, but their record is pretty good.
Oh, it's not for real in a like this team is built a sustainable thing, but you should absolutely ride this wave because when this happens, like it's baseball, freaky stuff.
It's super
happens.
Fun.
The division is down. The Angels, best player is out. Well, second best player now because Ohtani might have passed Mike Trout. Just every fluky, freaky win they get with these young guys who are playing out, above their pay grade. Dude, it's so fun. Just ride it.
And even Kellenic is starting to like not suck now, and that's pretty cool too. All right, I know you got to go. You got to hop on another call pipe. This has been fun. We've done what we always do in this program, which is catching up about sports, talking about sports, doing a little League World Series content. But Pipe, when is our fantasy draft again? Real quick.
It is Sunday the 22nd. So next
a week from
next
yesterday.
Sunday. Yeah.
Next Sunday, the 22nd.
Yeah, in the evening.
Perfect. I will be excited.
Yeah, so
that may be the time that I get to hang out with my son again, because we like to be in the same room for the fantasy draft.
You totally should do that.
Either I'll go to the dorm or he'll come here.
Oh, go to the dorm, and then we can recap that.
That would be incredible, dude. Yeah, going to the dorm, seeing what that's like for sure. Pipe, thanks for doing this, and until next time.
The Happy Rant is brought to you by Resonate Recordings. If you go to resonaterecordings.com, you can see the full range of services they offer. So if you're considering starting a podcast, they are the ones we recommend going with. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see their prices, to connect with them and ask any questions, and to see what they can do to help you launch, edit, master, and improve your podcast. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see what they can do to help you launch and improve your podcast.